Good morning. I'm Alphonso Peluso, and I have the pleasure of teaching here at Columbia College Chicago in the Interior Architecture program. Let's jump into it. Construction documents do not equal software. So why is construction documents now taught through the framework of software? One of the earliest known construction drawings is the architectural plan of Mesopotamia from 2100 BC, definitely not with software. I was a student of architecture in the early 90s. Most of my drawings were black inked lines on mylar. My experience with CAD was the same. The output was black lines on white paper. But why was it suddenly about software? I have some ideas why. I'll share them later. I will say this though. We are in a very important moment. It's a true paradigm shift. The software that is on the market looks and feels nothing like its predecessors. If you're waiting for Autodesk to cram AI into Revit, it's not going to happen, at least not successfully. So this is a question that I started asking back in 2013, 2014. Can we build without construction documents? Where did it start? I was teaching an advanced 4th and 5th year studio at IIT, and I decided to see if my students and I could answer the question, can we build without construction documents? So the 4th and 5th year studio was called Design as a Performative Material Practice. As you will see, the material used was carbon fiber. The students funded the project through a Kickstarter where they raised roughly $7,000. The project was called Fiberwave, and it was a proposed pavilion to be built outside of historic Crown Hall. Here you see the students doing what is called laying up. They created several molds on a CNC router, and through the process of layering carbon fiber cloth and resin, they created the pavilion's 96 repetitive units. Here you see the pavilion standing proudly in front of IIT's historic Crown Hall. And here's a detail of those units. No construction drawings were generated. This studio then spawned a digital fabrication elective. Our next go at it looked at using OSB painted Pepto-Bismol pink. The theme was Baroque, and the students took 6 Baroque churches in Rome and layered the floor plans to create what was called Le Blob. It was meant to be a space where once you stepped inside, there were several portals that framed your view to the outside. No construction drawings were generated. Then I had this wonderful idea. Can I do something similar with my students here in the interior architecture program? This time the theme was Gothic, and the space was meant to be a space within a space. It was essentially a small corridor leading to 2 classrooms. The material was Baltic birch plywood, and several Gothic archways were machined on a CNC router. The install was done during the last 4-hour class period. Again, no construction drawings were generated. So it was a success. So why not try it again? So what Italian architecture period was left? You guessed it, the Renaissance. The project was called Inner Anatomy. The student's design that was selected was a study of Leonardo da Vinci's anatomy drawings. The material this time was corrugated cardboard. With all of these projects, we started with small-scale prototypes, and then we worked our way up in scale. Again, using my favorite tool, a CNC machine. Layer upon layer were cut to size and then stacked on wooden dowel rods to make the complete small cavernous space. It was constructed on site in our beloved 10th floor fabrication facility in our Wabash building. If you haven't seen it, go check it out. You guessed it, no construction documents were generated. This is Jeff, one of our fabrication facility specialists. Okay, last project, and then I'll move on to hybrid workflows. This project did not look at historic architectural precedents, but rather looked at animals. This is the Spider Pavilion. The project was installed on site inside IIT's historic Crown Hall. The material was MDF. The project went on to win the annual Peter Hans Visual Training Award last spring. So are buildings being built in the real world without drawings? Yes, and this is a good example. This is a company called Icon. This is one of their early residential projects. A large CNC gantry shows up on site and essentially starts printing the majority of the walls in the project really quickly, and it happens in a day or two. Speaking of hybrid, the home structure is a hybrid of 3D printed walls and timber columns and beams. Where are my students and I now? At the beginning of this presentation, I mentioned that we are in a paradigm shift. What's different now than most paradigm shifts is this one is not happening in a silo. It's not just happening to the AEC community. It's happening to everyone. Beyond Revit, you might have showed up here for this tagline. BIM is dead, and I say this with true belief. BIM was an empty promise, a promise that was never fulfilled. This is good news. What does that mean? If your school's curriculum hasn't taught construction documents through the lens of Revit, you're okay. You get to leapfrog over it. Where will you end up? You will end up here with AI. Well, what does that mean? At the moment, it means that you'll be teaching hybrid workflows to produce construction documents. It won't be about the software that gets you there. It will be about what you end up with. The question that I asked at the beginning of the presentation was, can we build without construction drawings? I think the answer is yes. When? Hopefully soon. So when did my journey with AI begin? It began in 2023. And it began with image generation. So what does image generation evolution look like? I'll illustrate it here with the evolution of a representation of a hand. This is mid-journey, and this is version 1. Not a hand. Ooh, not a hand, not a hand. Getting closer, starting to look like a hand, stepping back a bit, going forward. Yep, better. And now with mid-journey version 7, we have a realistic hand, and it's animated. These are some examples of my AI interrogations. I say interrogation because it was important for me to interrogate the AI to produce what I wanted. I made sure that the AI could develop the style of images that I was trying to convey: ethereal heaven-like lighting, progressive forms, and a sense of movement. Now, I have a deeply rooted background in architectural renderings. I had my own company that specialized in creating architectural renderings, mainly for design competitions. I was fortunate enough to work with many of Chicago's architects, and I like to believe that my team and I helped them win design competitions. And that's how I ended up teaching here 26 years ago. I started teaching a digital rendering course. But that's low-hanging fruit, and I say that lovingly. I know what it took to make traditional digital architectural renderings. I became an expert at it, and it was painful. It was a constant struggle with the rendering engine. It was a struggle to get materials to look right, a struggle to get lighting to look real world, and the renderings took forever to render out. That is no more. AI has mastered generating architectural renderings. No more struggles. You get results in seconds. Here is the current list of AI image generators. For 2 years, I taught AI image generation in my AI in Architecture course. No more. Students can pick up any of these, and most have a free plan. I find that when students run out of free credits, they just move on to another one. Where are we now? Where are my students and I now? Hey chat, design me a building. I'm currently teaching the AI in Architecture course again, but this time it looks very different. It looks at AI and its role in the entire design process. So it's all phases: pre-design, schematic design, design development, construction documents, construction administration. This is a list of large language models. It's interesting that there are far less LLMs than generative AI apps. We started the semester with a series of skill building exercises. What did those look like? We started with using ChatGPT, which moving forward will be referred to as chat. I learned that from the students. So what is the big shift from image generation? The shift is generating 3D geometry, not just 2D. We looked at generating different building types. In this case, a pavilion, in this case, a stadium, and an office building with an open-air courtyard. Chat was able to generate either full Grasshopper scripts or Python scripts to be used in Grasshopper. The scripts generated 3D models in Rhino, so we now have building geometry that we can take into the next phases of design. So we continued our skill building exercises for schematic design. Students were asked to select a site in their hometown. This student's site is in Surat, Gujarat, India. It's near a riverbank. Then the students used chat to identify a problem with the site. So in the students' words, Surat experiences monsoon flooding due to its location. It's near the Arabian Sea. That brings in a lot of rainwater, and the quality of soil has a very low water retaining capacity. These issues were recognized by chat, and chat provided solutions regarding it. This is an excerpt from the conversation they had. We'll talk more about these conversations later. Next, the student used AI to do a site analysis. The analysis highlighted that the site is on a high flood risk zone. The AI recommended to consider this for the design. Also, the area and its surroundings consists of mid-income group people, so the design solution should be affordable yet comfortable to the people. And lastly, the site has high solar radiation and southwesterly winds. This creates opportunities for using solar power as a sustainable building design. And since the area receives high rainfall, the rainfall water can be stored using rainwater harvesting techniques. Then the AI generates a proposal for the site. In this case, it generated a residential tower lifted up on stilts to deal with the monsoon flooding. So in these hybrid workflows, I stress to the students that their brain is an AI. After all, AIs are meant to mimic the human brain. Now it's back to coding, but now with the site analysis information to feed back into the AI along with the student's brain power, making recommendations. Then using the scripted building geometry, we end up back at image generation. Man, these images can be intoxicating and seductive. In the next skill building assignment, I asked students to design a 2-story museum located in a city of their choice. This overachieving student selected 3 cities: New York, Chicago, and their hometown in Vietnam. We'll come back to the image generations later. They started with the Chicago scheme. The hybrid workflow began with asking chat to generate a program and then generate an Excel spreadsheet to later input into the AI. The AI then auto-generated a bubble diagram based on the input from the spreadsheet. It also generated an exploded axonometric. I have to mention, the students really love this app. I'll talk more about that later. Next, they took the massing diagrams and fed them into the AI rendering engine. This was repeated for the next 2 schemes. This one is in New York. This one is in Vietnam. Now, it's time for the students to apply what they learned from their skill building techniques to a midterm assignment. I asked them to design a new headquarters for Instagram located in Chicago. They needed to select a site, identify a problem, and find a solution. Almost all of the students fed the midterm assignment from the previous slide right into the AI. I will say that I found it interesting that out of 27 students who asked chat to suggest some sites for the HQ, most were given the same 5 to 7 sites to choose from. I don't know if that's good or bad. The site the students selected from the AI recommendations was the site of the former Montgomery Ward complex at a junction in the Chicago River. The site, however, was not one of the 5 to 7 that was typically suggested, but it had a lot of similarities. The reasons for this site are direct adjacency to the Chicago River, supporting Insta's focus on visual culture and public waterfront activation, existing tech ecosystem in River North, strong connection to transit lines, flexibility for a mid-rise campus with public Riverwalk access, plus good views. The problems with the site were minimal. The AI cited things like balancing security and privacy with public access, managing solar exposure on the south and west facades, integrating the discrete on-site apartment for visiting clients without compromising office privacy. Here are some excerpts from the more detailed conversation that the student had with chat. The students really value this discussion and feedback from chat. They feel that they can quickly dig deeper into a site and get a holistic analysis. Next, the student further drilled down into the site problem. Things like wind, flooding, congestion, and noise was brought up. Then the student asked chat to come up with some building massings that address the site problems. The first massing was exactly what the student asked in the prompt. It was nothing compelling, really. The student created 2 more prompts, one for an L-shaped building, which ended up being a U, and a second with 2 long bar low massings connected by short bar massing. The student selected the U shape. Next, they asked AI to generate a grasshopper script for a parametric facade. The student and the AI discussed generating an abstraction of the Instagram logo by creating a pixel grid that would serve as the facade's window openings. I thought this was a good quote. By modulating depth, density, and subtle color gradients within these circles, the building envelope echoes Instagram's gradient logo and the idea that many posts form a feed. Next came the analysis phase. The one on the left is accessibility. Green equals highly accessible. No problem getting to this site. On the right is population density. The dark is dense and the light is sparse. There are a decent amount of green spaces and former industrial sites in the area. On the left is a building types map. It's really a mixed use area. On the right is a map of building heights, also fairly mixed. On the left is a solar site radiation analysis. It's Chicago. We have a long winter, so there are a lot of heating days. On the right is a facade radiation analysis. I mentioned earlier that there is a lot of south and west exposure. The last 2 site analyses are wind and noise. It's the windy city. There's always wind. The site is not too noisy. The average noise was 68 decibels. Next was the program analysis. Bubble diagrams were made for each floor based on the AI-generated program. A separate AI was used to generate the apartment layout that I mentioned earlier. Then finally, some AI renderings were generated. This is a summer dusk view. This is a gray winter day like yesterday. And finally, a winter night. What were the tools we used? For site selection and problems, chat. For site analysis, Urbanize and Spacio. For programming spaces, Hypar. For programming the residential apartment, Maquette. I know what you're thinking. This guy didn't show us any construction drawings. What did I show? I showed a holistic hybrid workflow. The holistic workflow has geometry, fabrication, material behavior, and construction logic. What will hybrid workflows become? This is what hybrid workflows will become. They will have fabrication constraints, material tolerances, assembly logic, construction sequencing. So what comes next? The next step is clear. We will have hybrid workflows that produce construction documents with meaningful data, not just drawings, but buildable knowledge. I'll leave you with this question. I want you to remember the slide with all the AI image generators. How many construction document AIs will there be in 3 years? Okay, some shameless self-promotion. Be sure to follow me on Instagram where I do weekly commentaries on these subjects. All right, thank you. Have a great day.